I froze with the bouquet still in my hands, a ribbon cutting into my palm. The flowers were meant for him, a small welcome on his first day. He looked past them, past me, and said, "Jessica Ward, your time here is over." No hello, no why, just the sentence that pulls the floor out from under a person. I didn't drop the bouquet. I didn't beg. I stood there long enough to feel the sting spread from my throat to my eyes. Then I nodded once and let my face go still. The receptionist stared. A junior from my team half rose from a chair and sat back down. It felt like the lobby itself held its breath, waiting for me to crack. I didn't. I tucked the bouquet under my arm and walked to my desk. In the years I'd been here, I had done the messy, invisible work, the kinds of things no ribbon cutting ever shows. Building vendor trust one late-night call at a time, pulling a failing roll out of a nosedive, training new hires who were now managers. It had cost me more than a few birthdays and a marriage. But I told myself it mattered because the results were real, because I was building something that would outlast whatever name sat on the corner office. Apparently, that name decided I was disposable before he knew where the bathrooms were. I packed slowly, ritual more than necessity. A family photo, a chipped mug with our first big client's logo, a stack of handwritten notes from the team, thank yous and jokes, small anchors that had kept me honest on days when the job turned heavy. I placed the bouquet on top of the box like a strange, polite gravestone. People watched, some mouthed. What happened? I gave the smallest shake of my head. Don't. Not here. In the elevator it hit me in waves. Humiliation, then anger, then a sharp, clean focus that surprised me. On the walk to the car the anger faded, but the focus stayed. Firing me on his first day, before a single one-on-one, before review, before even asking what was in motion. He had no clue. 3 days earlier, I had sat in a glass-walled conference room across from Sable and Hart's general counsel and operations chief. It was the final pass on a supply agreement a year in the making. One that would underpin our expansion for the next 5. We had cleared pricing, timelines, logistics headaches you only notice once trucks start rolling. Then their counsel slid a final page across the table. Key person clause, she said. We've been burned before. My name was there in black ink. Project director of record. Continuity of leadership on our side wasn't a courtesy. It was a condition. If I left the company or was reassigned without mutual written consent, Sable and Hart could terminate immediately. No penalty to them, and we would forfeit the onboarding credit line we were counting on to finance the ramp. I knew why they wanted it. I also knew we needed the deal. So we negotiated. Tight timelines, limited carve-outs, clarity on what reassignment meant. And then we signed. I left that room with 2 things. Their trust and a document that made me in effect the hinge the door swung on. I didn't tell anyone at the office beyond the usual approvals. The red lines were illegal. The signatures were in the deal room. And the clause was in the version control system that pings whenever anyone alters a comma. It wasn't a secret. It was just something you only see if you look. He hadn't looked. At home, I set the box on the kitchen table and stared at the bouquet until the water beaded at the stems. I thought of calling my mother, who would have said, "Come over. We'll make tea. We'll watch something dumb until we laugh." I thought of my ex-husband's last accusation. "You love that job more than you love breathing," and wondered if he'd feel vindicated. My phone buzzed with messages from the team. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't going to run back waving a document like a victory flag. I wasn't going to text the new CEO a list of reasons he'd made a mistake. A person who believes power is a stage prop doesn't hear reason. They only hear applause or silence. I gave him silence. I opened my laptop. I forwarded nothing. Printed nothing. I wrote down in a private notebook everything that had happened from the moment I walked into the lobby to the moment I closed my front door. Names, words, small details I knew memory would blur by morning. Then I closed the notebook and made dinner. Underneath the embarrassment was a different feeling, one I hadn't expected. Relief. Not relief at losing a job I had bled for, but relief at finally seeing the truth of the place I worked. Some people wear their values like a uniform, Others only when the weather suits them. Today had been a hard, clean forecast. I slept badly. Dreams full of hallways and locked doors. Morning light sharpened everything. I brewed coffee and, for lack of anything else to do, trimmed the bouquet stems and moved them to a heavier vase. I had given them for good optics. I kept them now to remind myself of something better. Intention carries weight even when it's ignored. I didn't need to make the first move. The company would. Sable and Hart's onboarding packet triggered automatically once all signatures were verified. It included a welcome note, access credentials, and a polite reminder of the key person clause with a line, "We value continuity. If circumstances change, notify us immediately." Legal received the same packet. Finance received the draw schedule tied to that same contract. I poured my coffee and watched the steam rise. Somewhere in an office with a view and a nameplate not yet screwed straight, a notification pinged. Then another and another. By the time I set the mug down, my phone was face down on the table and the vase was steady in the center. A small, stubborn flame of color in a quiet kitchen. I didn't touch either. Across town, the receptionist would have stood, heels tapping, folders pressed to her chest. She would have knocked once and not waited. The door would have opened. His secretary, no, his gatekeeper, stormed inside. "Sir, you need to see this." When my phone rang that morning, I let it buzz until the screen went dark again. Then it lit up a second time. Same number, our company's main line. I knew if I answered a floodgate would open and I wasn't ready. I sipped my coffee deliberately slow and tried to focus on the ordinary things. The sound of the neighbor's lawn mower starting. The faint drip of the faucet I'd been meaning to fix for months. The steady hum of my refrigerator. Real life goes on, I reminded myself. Even when you're thrown out of the life you built. By the third call, curiosity got the better of me. Swipe. "Jessica," clipped voice said. It wasn't the CEO. It was his secretary, Marta. For as long as I'd been there, she had been the one to keep the chaos from spilling out of that corner office. Always professional, rarely emotional. But today, I heard something new in her voice. Panic. "You need to come in," she said. No greeting, no pleasantries. "There's an issue." I let a beat pass. "I don't work there anymore. Remember, Jessica." She lowered her voice like someone might overhear through the phone. "The Sable and Hart contract is unraveling. Legal flagged your name. They can't move forward without you." "Mr. Cole," she caught herself, then corrected. "Mr. Ward, that's what he's calling himself now. He doesn't understand. He thought it was a formality. It's not. He needs you back in that chair before this blows up in his face." Her words tumbled quickly, each one heavier than the last. I set the mug down before it slipped from my hand. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even smug. But what I felt instead was an ache in my chest. The kind you get when someone finally admits what you already knew. That all those nights, all those sacrifices weren't invisible after all. They mattered. They mattered so much that the deal could not exist without me. "I'm not going to rush over just because he made a mistake," I said finally, surprised at how calm I sounded. "He fired me, Marta." On his first day, without so much as a conversation. Silence stretched on the other end. Then carefully she said, "I understand, but please think about it. The board is already circling. They won't tolerate losing Sable and Hart." I ended the call without making a promise. My pulse hammered in my ears. The rest of the morning blurred. I tried reading, but the words floated. I went for a walk, but every face I passed looked like it might stop me and ask why I wasn't at the office. By lunchtime I had no appetite. Only a gnawing question. Did I want to save them? 'Cause I could. One call, one meeting, and the deal would steady again. But that also meant stepping back into the same halls where I'd been dismissed like a spare part. I didn't owe them that. Still, I owed myself clarity. So, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Nicole, an old colleague who had moved to another firm, but still kept an ear to the ground. If anyone knew what was really happening inside, it would be her. She picked up on the second ring. "Jessica." "Oh my God," I heard. "Are you okay?" I'm fine, I lied. But tell me straight. How bad is it? She didn't hesitate. It's bad. Word spread fast that you were out. Sable and Hart apparently called their counsel twice this morning asking for confirmation. When they didn't get it, they froze the contract. The CEO, the new one, tried to bluff in front of the board, said he was restructuring, but someone pointed out the clause. He looked like a deer in headlights. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles whitened. They'll try to pull you back in, Nicole continued, her tone softening. But if you go, make sure it's on your terms. Don't let them sweep this under the rug. They need you more than you need them right now. Her words echoed after we hung up. On my terms. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I opened my laptop again. My inbox was flooded. Messages from teammates, from legal, even from accounting. Most were polite, urgent, professional. A few carried a note of desperation, but one stood out. It was from Marta again. Just 4 words. Please call me tonight. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I opened the scan contract. Line by line, I traced the clause that now held the entire company hostage. My name wasn't just ink on a page. It was leverage. Proof that my work, my presence, had weight. And for the first time since being fired, I felt the balance shift. Not in their favor, in mine. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, watching the city lights blink on through the window. Somewhere in that glittering grid, he was pacing, scrambling, trying to stitch together authority he hadn't earned. And somewhere beneath him, the people who once looked to me for direction were waiting, uncertain, whispering in the halls. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about respect, dignity, about whether years of loyalty could be erased by a careless decision or whether I would finally demand what I was worth. I picked up my phone, not to call Marta, not yet, but to draft a message. 7 words, nothing more, we can talk. My conditions, not his. I didn't hit send. Not that night. But the words sat there on the screen, glowing back at me. A reminder that for once I wasn't the one waiting for permission. For once, the power was mine. I stared at the unsent text for a long time, then finally tapped send. We can talk. My conditions, not his. Marta called within a minute. What conditions? She asked, voice low like she'd stepped into an empty corridor. I want a written reinstatement retroactive to the day I was fired, I said. Full authority over Sable and Hart with no interference. I report directly to legal on this one, not to the CEO. If anyone tries to reassign me without the client's written consent, the contract stands and I walk with severance intact. Also, a non-retaliation clause. She was quiet, taking it down. I'll get legal in HR in a room. Can you come in? I'll come as a visitor, I said. No badges until I sign. When I pushed through the lobby doors, the air had the charged stillness of a storm about to break. Faces lifted, conversations clipped off mid-sentence. The bouquet I'd left yesterday sat on the receptionist's shelf in 2 small vases, petals already soft at the edges. I kept my eyes on the front desk. Miss Ward, the receptionist said, relief flickering across her face. They're expecting you. Security issued a visitor sticker like I was any other outsider. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, I caught reflections of my own expression in the glass. Calm on the surface, something coiled beneath. Marta met me at a conference room. She looked like the kind of tired that comes from trying to hold a building together with a roll of tape. General counsel is inside, she said. HR too. Legal had sent their senior, Amir Patel, gray at the temples, reading glasses perched on his head. HR's director Elise sat beside him with a folder already open. No CEO, Marta whispered. Jessica, Amir said. Standing. Thank you for coming. I'm here for the contract, I replied, taking the seat closest to the door to make the boundaries clear. He nodded, slid a draft across the table. Reinstatement letter retroactive addendum assigning you sole authority over the account for the duration of onboarding. Non-retaliation language here. We removed reasonable where it could weaken your autonomy. I read every line, pen uncapped. Strike subject to business needs, I said, tapping a sentence. That phrase is a loophole. Amir scratched it out without argument. Elise added a sticky note. The red lines began to feel less like leverage and more like scaffolding. Plain, structural, not dramatic, necessary. The door opened. The new CEO walked in, all polished impatience. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at the papers. What are we doing? He asked too loudly. Repairing what you broke. I said, not raising my voice. His jaw worked. We don't negotiate personnel decisions with employees. You do when a client has a key person clause. Amir said. Even. We're exposed. The CEO took a step closer to the table. I'm not comfortable with this reporting line. She should report to me. You're not listed anywhere on the Sable and Hart governance grid, I replied. They don't know you. They do know me. That's the point. He glanced at Elise, looking for an ally. She kept her eyes on the folder. This isn't personal, I added. It's continuity. Either we honor what we signed or we admit we agreed to terms we didn't read. Amir slid him a copy of the executed contract, a yellow tab marking the clause. He stared at it, then at me, the posture of a man who had expected the room to bend and found it stubbornly square. Fine, he said, but the word was brittle. Sign it. I will, I said. After one more thing. A joint email to Sable and Hart from legal confirming my status and clarifying no changes will be made without their consent. It goes out before I step into any call. Amir nodded. Agreed. The CEO's mouth thinned. We are not apologizing to a vendor. They're not a vendor, I said. They're our partner and today our lifeline. The room held its breath. For a moment, I thought he might derail the whole thing out of pride. Instead, he gave a tight, performative smile and took a seat, as if choosing to be magnanimous. We worked through the document line by line. When I finished, I slid the pen back and pushed the papers toward a mirror. That language I can live with. Marta reappeared at the door, a pale edge to her complexion. Sorry, she said. This can't wait. The CEO exhaled. What now? She handed me a printout. Sable and Hart's counsel forwarded a screenshot. Someone posted on the company LinkedIn. Day 1 reshaping the team, cutting dead weight. No more passengers. It went live half an hour ago. All eyes moved to the CEO. A red blotch crept up his neck. That was a scheduled post, he said. Generic. It wasn't about anyone. It doesn't matter what it was about, I said. It's how it reads. And it went up while their legal team was requesting assurance about leadership stability. Amir pinched the bridge of his nose. We'll delete it now and acknowledge the misstep in the email softly. Then we confirm continuity. The CEO bristled. We are not admitting fault on a public platform. Then we admit it privately to the only people who can tear up our contract without penalty, Amir replied, voice calm but steel-threaded. Choose your pride or your runway. He said nothing. The room heard the choice anyway. I drafted the body of the message. Concise, unambiguous, no flourishes. Continuity confirmed. Authority clarified. Commitment reaffirmed. Amir read it, nodded once, and hit send from legal's account. Copy landed in my inbox later. Cold proof that the ground had shifted. Credentials. Yes. Limited access. Deal room only. Elise slid a temporary badge across the table. Expires in 72 hours. It will restore your email with legal hold protections. I tucked the badge into my pocket. The threshold. I paused. One more thing, I said, turning to the CEO. When I walk into that client call, I represent all of us. You don't have to like how we got here, but don't make me defend us and you at the same time. He held my gaze, and for a flicker, I saw the smallest crack. Uncertainty or maybe recognition. Then it was gone. Do your job, he said. I always have, I answered. As I stepped into the hallway, my phone vibrated. An email preview from Sable and Hart's counsel. Thank you for the clarification. Before we proceed, there is one more concern we need to address. I didn't open it yet. I let the subject line sit there like a held breath. I had regained my ground. I had my power back. And for the first time the day felt like it might belong to me. I placed the bouquet back on the center table of the empty conference room. It was repair and it was enough.